Galatians, the book of Galatians. I think it was possibly last week that I talked about being ordained to bear fruit. Was that last week I did that? And I want us to look at a couple things here. If I can find Galatians. And we're going to go to chapter 5. We're going to look at some fruit. God has said that He's chosen us. We got that in John chapter 15. He's chosen us, and He's ordained us, and He sent us forth to bear fruit. So He wants us to be fruit bearers. And when we go to Galatians, and in chapter 4, it talks about, or chapter 5, I'm sorry, it talks about some fruit. Chapter 5, in verse 22. Now I'm going to read the fruit. And this is something everybody ought to have memorized. But the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit. Say Spirit. Spirit. It's the fruit of the Spirit. And what are we renewed in? The spirit of our mind. So the fruit of the Spirit is going to go together, isn't it? The fruit of the Spirit is, number one, love. Now, have you ever noticed that Satan's fruit is opposite of that? It's hatred and contentions and just all this other stuff. And have you ever noticed that a lot of Christians still use that kind of fruit? Their mouth just kind of gets them out of that love mode. But God says the fruit of the Spirit is love. Now, how many of you want God's fruit? How many of you remember that He ordained you to bear fruit? That's His plan. That's His purpose for you. How many of you know that sometimes you forget that? How many of you know that sometimes you go the other direction and God convicts you and you do something that you know is not God's fruit? Or you say something and you know it's not a godly thing. You know, it's good to stop and say, Lord, is this like you? What I'm doing, does it sound like you would sound? Am I acting like you would act? Am I pleasing you? Because that love relationship that you have with Christ will hold you. And it will keep you on a pathway of righteousness. It will keep you on a pathway where you walk in His love. It'll keep you. And when you start to step the wrong way, He'll convict you just like that. And you'll have to say, oh, I'm sorry, Lord. I'm sorry. And get right back on that pathway. I find that a lot of our bad fruit gets delivered through our mouth. How many of you know that there was a time in your life that you were totally negative? I was just totally negative. I was taught to be that way. And so that when you become positive, sometimes you get paranoid and you step back into something or another. Or that fear comes back and then your mouth follows suit. But the fruit of the Spirit is love. And so if we are loving ourselves in a healthy way, and each other, and the world, as God did, then that love is going to be boiling and bubbling up out of us instead of the old carnality. We had this carnal nature before we came to Christ. We had all this junk that we were used to just kind of just, you know, I won't say it, but I'm thinking, nasty. And so when we come to Christ, we want that mouth and the spirit of this mind cleaned up So that he acts like him, speaks like him, talks like him, and it really is him. See, we can act. How many of you know you can put on a good act? Can you put on a good act when people are around? But what about 24/7? It's hard to act all the time, isn't it? Eventually, the real person gets to come out. So God says, bear this fruit, and I think it needs to start with love. If you can work and allow God to work his love in you, I believe the rest of this fruit's going to start to follow suit. Now, I'm of the opinion that he's put this in an order, and that since love is first, we can't work it without love working first. I don't think you can put love on the back burner and say, well, I'll deal with that later. And I'm not talking about the sloppy agape love where people, oh, I love you, I love you, I love you. You don't mean it. You just say it out of habit. But the fruit of the Spirit is love. There's something down deep inside that you love. And then next is joy. Now, doesn't it make sense or stand to reason that if you've got this love bubbling out of you, and if it really feels right, that there's going to be joy coming right behind it? That joy is going to be there. So if the joy is not there, could it possibly be that the love is not quite right yet? If it's hard to have joy, and now there's other reasons, but joy is something that we need to take on. And I'm sensing that God wants to bring joy into this church. I want to see a smile on your face. I want to see joy in your heart and in your eyes. I want to see that joy. There's no reason not to have joy. I mean, can you think of one good reason that we should not have joy? Is there anything that should take our joy away? Oh, but preacher, you don't understand what I've been going through. You don't understand. Well, do I need to? Or can, I'm wondering, now, I doubt, I don't think I've ever met anybody, but what they can't just go. In fact, I haven't done this for a long time. Take your fingers and go like that. Just, I mean, you know, that's a victory sign. Come on, come on, come on, you gotta all do it. Now I want you to take those fingers and put them right here. Push up. Everybody's laughing. Whew. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't it feel good? Whew. It feels good. Yeah. And people try to stay so sober. The joy of the Lord is my strength, Nehemiah said. Jesus said, I want you to go and bear fruit. And some of the fruit is joy. It's joy. And the joy brings strength. Have you ever said, I'm weak? I'm weak? Oh, you don't know how weak I am. Well, go like this. Devil. I got the joy, whether you like it or not. I got the joy.